Hello, trying to be positive peeps. That I've decided is going to be our introduction. Normally, I do an introduction for a guest, but this week, the guest is me. So we're going to see how this goes. This is the first solo episode. I have had a multitude of you writing to ask me various questions, not only in the last hour or so, but also in the last 10 years. We are not going to cover everything. Just wanted to make sure that that was clear. But in order for it not to be entirely solo, I have asked my lovely producer, Ryan, to come on to assist me in asking a few of your questions. You wrote a lot of questions. I was shocked, actually, at the number of questions that you were able to produce as an audience in an hour. Some of them were about fertility, some of them were statements, and some of them were questions about me and my personal life, which I suppose we could do an episode on, but I mean, honestly, it would be pretty boring. I am an extremely boring person. So much so that if you were to follow me around for a week, you'd get confused between days. So, I don't know how much material we would have for that episode.
Okay, question number 1. Can my AMH fluctuate? My AMH was 3.5 in 2022, and now it's a 7.
Well, Ryan, I'm proud of you for increasing your AMH. And you've just answered your own question. The AMH can fluctuate. In all seriousness, yes, your AMH can fluctuate. It can go down, which is what we mostly hear about and are terrified by. But it can also increase. It's affected by a lot of factors, lifestyle and or intervention. For example, because your AMH is produced in your ovaries. When you lose an ovary, for example, hello, I'm Anne, I've lost an ovary. If you've lost an ovary, then your AMH is going to naturally be lower. If you have undergone chemotherapy, your AMH is going to be lower. If you are deficient in vitamin D, your AMH is going to be lower. If you have high levels of inflammation, your AMH is going to be lower. Now, that one is interesting because I've been on a live before with a fertility doctor, and one of these questions was similar, along the lines of, my AMH has increased. Is that possible? And I always think it's interesting because fertility doctors, for the most part, will ignore that. It'll go, for example, in this from, 3.5 to 7, and they'll think that that is not, a notable increase. But if it were to go the opposite way, from 7 to 3.5, you'd be on the operating table before you'd even done stems. So it's interesting when you look at the context. Other things that can dramatically improve your AMH include, but are not limited to, and this is not self-promotion, but acupuncture has been found to improve AMH levels. I think that that's from both a perspective of it can lower AMH for the PCOS patient, where AMH is actually problematically high in a lot of cases. And it can increase AMH for those who are suffering from, for example, like a DOR diagnosis or diminished ovarian reserve. I think the way that it does that is improves inflammatory markers in the body and also helps decrease stress, because stress has been found when high levels of stress, it actually decreases AMH in an already lowered AMH population. So, yes, AMH can fluctuate.
That was an excellent segue because question number 2 is DOR treatment, ... Go.
So DOR, diminished ovarian reserve, essentially just means that you have a low AMH. It should also mean that your FSH, or your follicle stimulating hormone, is slightly elevated, because that would indicate that you're moving slowly towards potentially perimenopause and then menopause. Because once your follicle stimulating hormone is very high and your anti-Mullerian hormone is very low, it's a good indication that you are either in perimenopause or menopause. Because what happens is your follicle stimulating hormone, and the reason why I'm explaining all of this is because it's more than just AMH. Your follicle stimulating hormone is the hormone that talks to the ovaries. You want it to be in a normal tone. So I like the analogy of the FSH is me, the parent, the follicle stimulating hormone. The brain, the parent, is speaking in soft tones to the ovary, aka the child. And I should be able to get my message across. Like, hello, it's day 3 of your cycle. Time to start making some follicles. Our estrogen is very low. To which then the well-behaved child, aka the well-behaved ovary, starts to produce follicles, which then produce estrogen. As we get older, as can happen when you get older, especially as Sharon, my mother, she's very ornery, you get grumpy and you have no patience for this badly behaved child who is no longer listening. So I am now screaming. My levels have gotten very high, follicle stimulating hormone. I'm screaming at the ovary like, hello, are you even listening? Why are you not making follicles? My estrogen is very low. But as that level increases and then the response from the ovary stays the same, essentially your body is now, the communication between brain and ovary is not happening, which then that's problematic because people are always very concerned. They hear levels like, oh, your AMH is very low, like, oh, your AMH is 4. And they think that it means, that you have like 4 eggs left. I've had that happen where someone came in and she was like, my AMH is 12. I've got like a year. I was like, no, you don't. You've got a long time. Like 12 is fine. You will in fact have eggs in your ovaries until you are in menopause. The issue is that your brain and your ovaries are no longer in communication. And it's just that communication network has broken down. Essentially, your hormones have failed you, not your ovaries. So as your ovarian reserve decreases, so there's less, it doesn't mean that there is no more eggs. And it's actually really interesting because when they've done IVF, for example, having a lower AMH doesn't mean that you have lower quality eggs. It just means that you're not going to respond as well to stimulation medication, which makes sense because your FSH in that scenario is normally also higher. So why would, if you're then adding just more FSH, which is what stims are made from, and LH as well, then your ovaries they're not going to respond the same way because they're used to getting yelled at. They're like a bad kid. They're like, what do you want? You always yell at me. Get out of here. Get out of my room, mom. So diminished ovarian reserve, ways in which that you can improve the scenario. First and foremost, I would make sure that you in fact do have DOR, true DOR, because a lot of the time people will come into my clinic and tell me, I have diminished ovarian reserve. And I ask them what it is, and they'll tell me something along those lines, like my AMH is 12, which depending on the fertility doctor, some fertility doctors might classify that as DOR and others may not. I find that there's, for instance, they've got different arbitrary amounts per age. So, for example, my AMH as an 18-year-old would have been extremely problematic. But because of either very good luck or lifestyle, my level has stayed relatively stable and my FSH didn't get incredibly high. And so now at the age of 39, although I'm still not in the normal category for my age group, I would still be very low. It's not as problematic as when I was 18. So I find those age rankings, the way that it's categorized, truly very problematic. And I'm not exactly sure what they exist for, except to scare people. So it's important to know, do you in fact have DOR? is it based off of an age categorization, or is it because you actually have FSH that is close to 15, AMH that is lower than like 5, I would say. And it's important to have those levels checked and rechecked, because if it's remaining stable, like if your follicle stimulating hormone is remaining around the same level, checked on day 3, and your AMH is remaining along the same level, it doesn't really matter when you check it. It can be checked at any point in the cycle. Then you don't really have that grave of a concern. It's only when things are falling drastically, like if you were to, for example, have these levels checked when you were 25 and then have those levels checked again when you were 30 and you noticed a massive drop. Like an example of that would be, let's say my levels when I was 25 of AMH was 20, and then my level when I was 30 is now 3. That's problematic. But if it's 18, 19, or even like 15, I wouldn't be concerned. People always come into the clinic terrified, claiming that their AMH has dropped off a cliff, when in reality, it's stayed relatively the same. It has to drop at some point, or else you'd be having kids into your 60s and 70s, which honestly, from just sheerly like an energy output, I wouldn't want to do. Treatment for DOR would include, first of all, getting the diagnosis. Is it actually accurate? Secondly, how inflammatory is your lifestyle? Looking at the things that can decrease AMH, is your vitamin D level within the normal range? Yes or no? And it was interesting, actually. I read a study that found that increasing vitamin D didn't actually increase AMH in this particular study, but it increased the live birth rate, which ultimately is what we're after anyway. So is your vitamin D level normal? Have you been taking antioxidants? That's so important. Have you been incorporating normal and regular levels of physical activity? Because I feel like that's normally discouraged in a lot of fertility settings. Activity is so controversial, and it's so strange to me, because it's one of the easiest things to do would be to take a walk. What would to me would be much more challenging would be to find a decent acupuncturist and lie there for 60 minutes while someone puts needles in you. Like, people are literally more willing to have a stranger put needles in them than go for a walk. It's crazy. Like, I'm an acupuncturist. I would way rather go for a walk, But anyway, I digress. DOR treatment, get acupuncture, make sure that you actually have the diagnosis that you truly have. Make sure that you are eating in an anti-inflammatory capacity, less refined foods, no fried food, reducing sugar. Don't drink the diet drinks.
I can't stand. I hate diet drinks.
But it's not even. People think that it's because I'm anti-chemical, like aspartame. But it's not. It's because your brain takes the sweet taste and then you have an insulin response. So even if your blood sugar remains the same because you haven't eaten something sweet, your body still reacts as though it has. And therefore, it affects the way that your body stores fat. Something people don't realize is that you're born with all of your fat cells that you will ever have. They just shrink and grow. But if you're constantly dysregulating your insulin level, then if you're drinking diet soda after diet soda after diet soda, you're never going to achieve actual balanced insulin, which is then going to throw your body into an inflammatory storm. And you are going to hold on to fat when you don't want to. And by hold on to fat, I mean like you're the size of the fat cell, as opposed to like you're not going to actually like shed fat.
I know all about that.
Shedding fat.
All right. Well, that kind of like segues into another one.
Okay.
Which when I tell people I'm doing a podcast with you and it's circled around fertility, this is kind of like the main kind of question that people think it's almost like a stupid question. But even I think it's a good question. And a lot of people ask it is, can I work out if I'm trying to conceive?
So that one is a really big one that I'm really passionate about. So my background, I was a competitive track athlete when I was in middle school, and then in high school. I was actually coached in high school by the U of T Junior Blues coach, and then was taken right into the track team. And that was part of my decision to go to Trinity College U of T, was because I was already part of the track team from a training capacity when I was in high school. I essentially was running from the moment that I could walk, and I used it not only to train for track, but also to train for other sports. So volleyball, tennis, badminton, I played it all. So I'm very pro sports, and it's a way that I not only have managed my own stress, but it's a way that I've like made friends and felt connected to my community. So I know a lot of people fall into that same way of thinking. And when you're doing fertility and things are already so stressful and you have so much that it feels like it's been taken away from you, and you're now isolated from these communities that you felt so a part of, when you then take away something like sports or physical activity based on nonsense, non-science, rationale, it's so harmful. I actually put myself through my doctorate and actually through my second university degree by being a personal trainer. So I was a personal trainer independently, and then I moved to Vancouver and was a personal trainer first just at a gym, and then I was the trainer of the trainers, so like the fitness manager of this particular gym. And then I was the district manager, so I managed 6 clubs and something like, I don't know, like 120 trainers. Obviously, super passionate about working out and seeing what a difference it could make, not only in my life, but also my clients' lives. It's interesting because a segue from training to acupuncture, beyond me actually just putting myself through school, was it was amazing to me that a lot of these clients that I was helping, they had PCOS, and it was incredibly hard for them to lose weight. And a lot of the time, once we started getting the ball rolling by managing both what they were eating as well as helping them work out effectively for the right amount of time, it's key. You're not like, PCOS is a very specific exercise type. Like you can't be, if you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, it's not a good idea to increase your cortisol for extended periods of time. So a HIIT type workout, which most people think is incredibly aggressive, is for a short period of time, and it's based around interval training. Heavier weights, short bursts of cardio, that's the best way to work out for PCOS. And I would be running my PCOS patients through this type of workout. Not only would they start to lose weight, but they would start to ovulate, which obviously for fertility purposes is the most important aspect of fertility. So from like just a pure science standpoint, when you're looking at the journals, you can see that when comparing patients going through IVF in the stimulation phase, the patients who were maintaining regular physical activity, and then the patients who were just remaining sedentary, the patients who were maintaining physical activity had better results. So it's strange to me that as fertility doctors, specifically where we are in the Greater Toronto area, recommend that patients don't move, that they don't work out. Now, I can understand their concern because when you're undergoing stimulation, your ovaries do increase in size. And I know a lot of people think that their ovaries are actually attached to their fallopian tubes and that they're structurally sound, but they're not. They're normally the size of a grape. And when you're undergoing stems, now they've increased to the size of, at times, like an orange. And so what you don't want is torsion. So you don't want them to twist and then for their blood supply to be cut off, because that is then a life-threatening emergency. So I get why it's recommended that you not work out when going through stems. But the key is to listen to your body. Don't do activity that you know is going to increase the risk of torsion. So maintaining walking is going to be totally fine. Activities where you're twisting, like Pilates, for example, not a good call. Activities where I like to keep the rule of thumb where if I'm undergoing stems, I at no point want my hips to be above my head, or for my head to be level with my hips. So example, no hip bridges. So no lying on your back where your hips are now over your head. No deadlifts where your head is now level with your hips. But if you're doing like squats, for example, that's not going to be a problem. If you're doing, I wouldn't recommend lunges, because although your head is not below your hips, there's a chance that you might fall. So you want to avoid anything where you might fall. So maybe if you want to go biking, go on your stationary bike as opposed to on your road bike. Like there's things that you can do to like minimize the risk of twisting, falling, or having your hips above your head.
Yeah, I can imagine it's more about, I mean, what exercise like do you do? And then if you just look at the sign, yeah, like twisting, and also just like how hard can you push yourself? Like,
yeah, that's the thing. Like you're not going to feel like pushing yourself that hard. But going for a walk, going for a Peloton ride, going and doing like a light body weight circuit where you maintain that head above hips rule of thumb, that's absolutely fine. What is recommended a lot of the time is yoga, which is actually probably the worst thing you could do when your ovaries are 5 times their normal size, because yoga is a lot of twisting. It's a lot where your hips are above your head. So, and I'm not just saying this because I hate yoga, but I do hate yoga.
yeah, it's quite boring.
It's the worst.
Yeah, I would think a lot of the yoga moves are
The
like your
worst.
head is below your hips
Yeah.
in a lot of movements.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, segueing into Peloton rides, unless you want to keep going on that
Well,
one.
the last thing I do want to say is when I posted the other day on Instagram the studies around physical activity and fertility and the importance of maintaining physical activity. And I got some pushback from a few naturopathic doctors where they were concerned about hypothalamic amenorrhea. Now, in that instance, a lot of the time, the concern is actually a lot less about over-exercising and a lot more to do with calorie restriction. So if you have lost your period due to excess exercise, obviously that's problematic, because then it means that you're not ovulating. And if you're now exercising past the point where it's reducing stress and is now just increasing stress, then it's not going to be beneficial. But a lot of the time, it's not how hard you're working out, but rather how little you're eating, which in our last episode, I've now convinced all of our listeners that I have an eating disorder, because they think I eat nothing all day and then have like a plate of cauliflower rice at night.
No, you have a working eating disorder. As someone who used to work 12 hours a day, I totally get it.
Yeah, it's intermittent fasting, essentially.
Well, you don't wake up. I feel like this is a whole other episode, but you don't wake up early enough, nor that you want to make a giant breakfast.
I can't do it.
And then you also don't have time to eat a big lunch.
No.
So you just have to do what you got to do when you work as much as you do.
I feel pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, but also I can imagine people see the workouts that you do on your stories and they look like pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like when I go to the gym, I'm just like kind of going straight bodybuilding exercises because I have a problem with raising my heart rate, which I should probably do more. But I watch you work out and it's like, whoa. There's
Ryan,
some like,
it's so nice.
yeah, there's a
Cute.
lot of movement, and I'm sure your heart rate is getting elevated.
Yes, it does. But it's how I manage my stress. And I found it was my number one coping mechanism through a lot of, stress that I have gone through from, being like a single parent and losing a parent and being in a full-time doctorate program while also being a district manager. Like I don't think I could have done any of that if I hadn't had like an outlet, which for me has varied between weights. I actually swam for a while when I broke both my legs. Um, that makes me sound insane. I got stress fractures in both my tibias when I was in third year university, and I had to spend a year in the pool wearing a flotation belt, and I made friends with all of the elderly 70-year-olds who did aquafit. It was good.
Yeah.
It was a good year. They helped me too. Good community.
All right, another question, and this relates to me and a lot of conversations we've had in the past. How do you treat male infertility?
I feel like we should let the
This is
viewers
a whole
know.
episode. Like,
We should let the viewers know that you did in fact get your results back from the fertility clinic where we went.
Yes.
But the results were quasi problematic, not in that you had any problems, but that it was only a few markers.
Yeah.
So it didn't really give you the full picture of what was going on with your sperm. So,
yeah, and I think based on my results, even with the markers that they did have, I was kind of an example of somebody who was going to be okay, but just needed to switch a habit or two to make it a little bit better, which was THC consumption. Not that I'm a pothead or anything, but sometimes like you just want to go to bed, or if someone who stares at their laptop and does something creative, I need just kind of a fresh mindset. So sometimes I turn to that, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who are in a lot worse situations and they don't really know how to fix it or even if they can fix it.
okay. So the segue, that's really important. Mostly THC as an environmental toxin mostly is affecting your motility or the way that your sperm move. So progressive motility is very important and is a good indicator of healthy sperm. You want it to be over 40%. So you want over 40% of the sperm that you have to be moving in a progressive capacity, aka forward, which is impacted by the shape. So they all work together. So morphology is the measure that indicates what sperm are shaped normally. So like, is the anatomy of the sperm normal? I always think it's really amusing to read about the like two tails and the deformed heads, aka like the two round. So if you look at morphology and then you look at the percentage, it's like head defects, tail defects. And if you read about the various tail defects, like they're pretty cool. Like there's one that's coiled, like a coiled tail.
Oh, weird.
What?
I don't know.
Look, I've got something to make sperm fun. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Hold on. So this is my sperm doll, Jerry. He is a cell because your sperm is actually a cell, which is pretty interesting because when you picture cells, you don't picture them like actual little living creatures that are moving in a progressive way. You know?
Yeah.
Like I look at my like skin. I'm like, oh, look at my skin cell. That's not a cool cell to be. If I was a cell, I would want to be a sperm cell. Actually, maybe I would want to be an egg cell because it's the largest cell in the human body. Although smaller might be cooler in that no one can even see you unless you're in a microscope.
That thing has a face.
I know, but this isn't realistic. It's huge. Can you imagine if this came out of you?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Wouldn't that be a surprise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably hurt.
Poor Jerry. I'm going to put you back in here, man. I know. If you think about like a little kidney stone, how much that hurts, like a little piece of gravel. Meanwhile, we're like pushing things out like twice the size of this out of our various holes. One hole. Can only come out of one hole. Actually, it could come out of your stomach too if you cut it open, but it's not like, that's a man-made hole. Still birth. I'm very pro C-section. That went a whole other way.
It did.
Things to ensure that you have healthy sperm. I think it's really important to note that there's no focus to DNA fragmentation. A lot of the time, clinics are not running your DNA frag if you don't ask to have it done. So let's say, for instance, I have gone into the clinic because I've had a miscarriage and my partner is coming in. They're doing their CN analysis. It looks pretty good. There's like maybe low morphology because both morphology and DNA fragmentation, those are both affected by heat. So typically if one is low, the other one might be a problem as well, which in the case of DNA fragmentation, you don't want it to be above 15%, meaning that you want it. I constantly now I'm getting patients where they're going in and they're finding out that their DNA fragmentation is well over 20. And then it's being recommended that you just keep trying, which is insane. There is a lot of interesting research that indicates that eggs can repair DNA damage to sperm. So an older egg, for example, if you put young, well-formed, progressive, low DNA frag sperm into the petri dish with that older egg, she has no work to do. She doesn't have to repair any damage. You're going to create potentially a very beautiful little healthy euploid embryo from that combination. But if you have older sperm where there's high DNA damage, like there's high DNA fragmentation, there is, very low percent morphology normal sperm, and the motility is so, and then the egg doesn't repair it because she's tired. She's like, I don't want to deal with your nonsense. She doesn't have the mitochondrial energy to deal with this poor sperm. And then no normal embryos are created from that. Instead of saying, hey, why don't you change your sperm capacity by improving your lifestyle? Because these epigenetic factors of lifestyle can drastically improve sperm. Instead of that, the conversation is just, oh, your eggs are old. So that's why this didn't work out. Your eggs are old, and so we're going to probably have to just do more rounds of IVF. Like, what? No, improve the sperm so that the egg has less work to do. Anyway, things that you should be trying to fix. Make sure that your partner is on a good antioxidant support. So antioxidants that you want to make sure is in this formula include but aren't limited to NAC, CoQ10, L-carnitine, zinc, vitamin C, and selenium. I really like the NFH male fertility supplement. It's 4 pills. You can take them all at once, but make sure that you take them with food because anything that contains zinc can bother your stomach if you take it on an empty stomach. The fertility matrix is also a really good supplement for male factor, as is the bioclinical male fertility support pack. And of course, our friends at Bird and Bee make a very good sperm support supplement. So there's so many options. Fertile Pro is often what is given out at the fertility clinics. But honestly, if you're looking at the studied value, like how much is actually been studied to benefit sperm, and then you look at the amount that's in the Fertile Pro, all the ingredients are there, but not in the amounts that would have been proven to be beneficial. And I understand it's because men don't want to take, handfuls of pills. But sorry, guys, like that's just something that's a pill you're going to have to swallow.
Yeah.
But
I don't really get that.
Yeah, no, it's strange.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a person by person thing. I don't really have a problem with taking
but it's also
a bunch
like
of pills at a time.
Society making the decision for them. It's like, oh, men don't want to take pills.
Why?
So I know. But this is the thing. I think if my husband had gone to the doctor and the doctor had said, this is a supplement that's going to benefit your sperm, he would do no further research. He would just take what the doctor had given him.
Yeah.
But if we're going to be using science to back our decisions, then we need to use all of the science as opposed to selective science. Like, we're going to take the ingredients, but not in the amount that's actually been proven to be beneficial. It makes no sense. Other factors, take your chap out of the bath. Take him out of the hot tub. No sauna. So sorry. What's super popular right now is the cold plunge
yeah.
sauna scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Skip the sauna, stick with the cold plunge. A lot of men seem to be under the impression that if they do one followed by the other very quickly, that it won't have an impact on their sperm, but it does. Because if, for instance, you're sitting in a sauna for 20, 30 minutes at a time, like picture a forest. If you light the forest on fire for 30 minutes and then you douse said forest with a cloud of rain, the forest is still damaged. Like, yeah, you've put it out so there's less damage, but there's still damage. So
that's a good example.
Thank you. The energy tree.
Yeah, those are.
That's right. Save your energy trees.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't put them in the fire.
Don't burn your forest for 30 minutes.
No, exactly.
That one's funny.
Exactly.
I like that one.
Like, there's so many times in your life, if you want to start all of a sudden becoming some sort of like Nordic health nut, that you can do that. You want to live up your Viking status? Like, sure. Do that once you're done having kids, or like once your wife is past 12 weeks pregnant. Like, come on. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
We're better than this as like humanity. Humanity is better than this.
Mm-hmm.
Picture your like tiny unborn child and do it for them because it matters. If you think it's like common sense has gone out the window. People think that people are made from like puffs of air, like nothing. There's no respect given to the DNA from egg and sperm. And so this conversation of like, well, if I just do IVF, like you've just taken these cells that you've put no work into and you're hoping it's going to make a viable embryo, which PS, remember, becomes your child. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's crazy.
It is.
There's also like there's a number of risks that are involved whenever you are having to now do IVF. So this idea of like, well, who cares? We'll just do IVF. Like we'll just use ICSI. It's like that's not a just scenario. It's a valuable one. And I've said this many times, like if you gave me the option between not having children and doing IVF, I would without a doubt do IVF, all risks in. But the consideration of the risks has to be part of the discussion. And nobody ever discusses it from the standpoint of the actual drugs to the procedure to the impact on your future child. And I think that needs to be part of the discussion because not doing so is really disrespectful to the people who are undergoing these procedures. So,
well said.
Thank you. This PS I wanted to give credit was given to me by one of my sweetest angel patients and her husband. Because I told her that my husband had thrown out my other one.
So they went out. Where do you even get that?
You can get this at Amazon.
Oh, right. Just type in
Jerry.
a sperm beanie baby.
Just put sperm doll.
Yeah.
He's so cute. I love him.
Yeah, he's got a face.
He's
and everything.
doesn't he make sperm fun?
Yeah, a little bit.
Look at his nice tail. Not coiled at all.
No.
Mid body, so healthy. Boop, boop. Normal sized head with the point.
Yeah, but don't you need like 1 million of those?
You need significantly more than 1 million, Ryan.
That's insane to me.
If you had only 1 million sperm, I would be worried.
I think that's like the craziest thing. Like that is insane to me. Like you say you're hyperbolic in so many things in your life explaining something. Like if I had 1 million of this, 1 million of that, and you're always like, that's crazy. And then you bring up sperm, and you're like, if I had 1 million of that, and it's like, that is concerning.
Yeah, I would be worried.
That's why it's so interesting and crazy to me.
Yeah.
That 1 million little Jerrys is not enough.
No, it's not. You should aim to have significantly more than that.
Yeah.
At least over 40 million on the low
40
end.
million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. You know. But you're so lucky. Like you have 74 to 90 days to improve your sperm. I had a patient who his DNA fragmentation was 20% in January. And now it's 9. That's crazy. That's such an impressive improvement from simply he stopped wearing the compression shorts. He stopped vaping, and he started taking his antioxidant support. So easy.
Yeah, I think what you have to do as a man to turn it around, there's really no excuse not to. Like you could think about your unborn child, and that could motivate you, which that would motivate a lot of people. But for you to make such a serious life change, it might be harder. But they're all small, tiny things, and it can be reversed in a small period of time. I think that's where if someone's coming in here and making excuses about things they can't do, like it's kind of bullshit. It's like there's very small things you can do to make a change.
Yeah, especially when your partner is willing to do so much.
Yeah. And there's no comparing, like, I mean, we're just working with you, just what women have to go through. Like, it's a joke if you're comparing.
Especially just to get there.
Yeah.
Like, just to become fertile.
Yeah. And
forget the pregnancy.
Yeah. That's where, like, maybe I just have immense respect for women in general, but how could you even compare just getting out of a sauna to just everything that women have to go through? That's what I don't understand with dudes who are stubborn in that area.
I think it's also important. There was a really excellent podcast that was hosted by Stephen Bartlett on the Diary of CEO, and he had a urologist whose name has escaped me, but he was discussing how sperm is very much a barometer for a man's overall health, and that men who had poor sperm had a significantly shorter life expectancy. So if you think about looking at your sperm as like a warning, like if your sperm is very poor, I would look at that, to me, knowing that as something that I would be actively trying to improve, not only to create life, but to elongate my own. Because it makes sense. It's common sense. Your cells are a reflection of what's going on in your body. Even from the standpoint of like fixing a varicocele. A lot of urologists in Toronto specifically will tell you, well, it doesn't matter. You know, you're looking at the sperm numbers, you can see, oh, my DNA fragmentation is very poor. My morphology is very poor, but I'm not going to go ahead and fix this varicocele because the urologist says that it doesn't matter. I mean, it's quite literally like a varicose vein in your testicle. That's going to impact circulation, not only just in the testicle. If you reduced circulation anywhere in your body, it's going to have an impact on your whole body. So why wouldn't you undergo a 15-minute procedure, most of which is now done interventionally and not locally, to not only improve that situation, but your overall circulatory health. Wild.
The $1 million question.
Wow. It's the $40 million question.
Oh. You need 40 million Jerry's. Well, you had a lot of questions sent in, which is great, but we only went through 4 and we've kind of hit our time.
Right.
So I want people to give you any sort of feedback if they like enjoyed this style of episode, because I know me personally, I've wanted to hear more from you. I love the stories. I love when you interview people. It's great to get info, but at the end of the day, this is trying to be positive with Ann Matthews.
I've embraced this host scenario though.
Yeah. So
I love hearing other people.
I think it's nice for you to do a little more work and answer and answer people's questions and get feedback if people want more of this, because I certainly enjoyed sitting here. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I think people just want to pick your brain as much as possible, which is why your wait list is as long as it is. So I think doing more episodes like this can help people who potentially don't have the opportunity to see you and just get information out of you.
Yeah, that is the mission. That's the 2024-2025 mission, is to get information out as far as possible so that more people can get their positive.
Mm-hmm. And also, don't forget, like and subscribe. I'll do it for you this time.
Okay.
Apple Podcasts, follow, rate, review, leave a comment. You don't always have to leave a comment. Even if you just want to leave 5 stars, that's totally fine. But every single rating we get pushes us up the charts, which more people can see us. We can get better guests, like you always say. And then Spotify, just follow, 5 stars. Then go over to YouTube, subscribe, and just like all the videos. And try to watch as many as you can, because there's a lot of great information.
And share those videos.
Mm-hmm. Share.
Share it all.
Sharing is caring.
Caring is caring.